It is the place where students can cultivate their desire to be the best version of themselves.
It has enabled me to meet fellow graduates all around the world.
The university taught me that dreams are achievable.
I was a mature student and it gave me confidence.
It's a fantastic place with great energy, both from the internal community and external community.
As a student, DCU helped me figure out who I wanted to be. And now, as a lecturer, I get to try and do the same for my students.
DCU has been my home for the past 5 years, and I've learned that DCU always puts the student first.
The DCU Access Service has given me an opportunity for a brighter future.
DCU gave me the international exposure I was looking for. Since the international standards are so high, DCU pushes me to be at the best of my game always.
DCU has brought a new dimension into my life in the form of new friends.
Tá an clubban agus suki anseo I DCU agus tám I mamal den a lán suki freisin, agus mar sin rinne mé a lán chairde nua anseo I DCU.
The university has given me the opportunity to broadcast my voice.
I'm always struck by the shared values of the DCU community and the way in which students, staff and alumni are focused on transforming lives and societies.
The most transformative experience for me in DCU has been working with asylum seekers for the MELI project and working towards cultural assimilation.
The university allowed me to combine both my sporting and academic careers, allowing me to perform on the world-class stage, winning a European Championship medal, multiple World Championship medals and multiple World Cup medals.
It has provided me with many learning opportunities to learn from athletes from all over the world.
It gives me the opportunity to excel academically and on track.
The impact DCU had on me personally has been profound. The MBA allowed me to harness the learnings I had from the sports field into a different environment. I feel I can make a real difference in my role with DCU Educational Trust by assisting DCU transforming lives and society.
In the library, students grow in confidence.
With perseverance and the right attitude, people can do anything.
DCU is about making a difference.
Everybody knows DCU as a university that makes a difference to the world around us. Our students have their lives transformed by their experience here, especially through their employability, and Access students are the best example of that. But we've also transformed this region through our dramatically increased footprint, through our contribution to jobs, arts and culture in the region. DCU, the university that makes a difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DCU. We're here this evening to celebrate the publication of DCU 1980 to 2020, Designed to be Different. My name is John McDonough and I am the University Librarian. Under normal circumstances, I would be welcoming you into the O'Reilly Library at the end of the mall on our Glasnevin campus. You would have walked past many of the buildings and faculties mentioned throughout this book. However, we have moved this event online, so I hope you've had the opportunity to step away from Zoom and team meetings, got yourself a refreshment, and be able to join us for the next 30 minutes or so. We have 3 speakers this evening. The author, Mr. Eoin Kinsella, and our guest of honour, Dr. Mary Canning, President of the Royal Irish Academy. However, our first speaker is someone who knows DCU better than most, having led the university for the last 10 years. He has been instrumental in its growth, in its ambition, its size and its impact. It is my great pleasure to welcome Professor Brian MacCraith, President of DCU, to speak.
Gine Usla, while am fáilte choróibh go léir hiag an ócáid speisialta seo ar líne. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all very welcome to the launch of this important new history, Dublin City University 1980 to 2020, Designed to be Different. Book launches normally involve standing in crowded rooms full of clusters of chatter with a glass of very inexpensive wine in hand. I'm sorry that technology is insufficiently advanced to replicate all of those sensations for you, but at least you can pour yourself a decent glass of wine at home. Back in 2015, I was approached by a number of retired members of staff, including Albert Pratt, Brian Trench and John Horgan, about the idea of a written history of DCU. It didn't require a long conversation, and I was very happy to provide my approval for the idea. and to initiate the process that has led to today's important event. As time moved on, it became clear that a likely and realistic completion year for this project was 2020, and indeed that this would also be very appropriate as it marked 40 years since we admitted our very first students, just 191 of them, in November 1980. So the motivation for commissioning this history of DCU was not only to mark this significant anniversary, but also to ensure that the historical record of such a rapidly changing and impactful institution could be captured as accurately as possible when many of those directly involved in its development could contribute their own personal recollections. The journey of our first 40 years has been an extraordinary one. From the opening of NIHE Dublin with just a handful of buildings to where we are now, an esteemed higher education institution at home and abroad. Today, DCU is a multi-campus university with more than 18,000 students, ranked in the top 20 worldwide for our graduate employment rate, home to 5 research-intensive faculties, including Ireland's only Faculty of Education, a university that is renowned for its commitment to inclusion, a university that is ranked 12th in the world for its demonstrable commitment and achievement in the area of sustainability. And of course, I could go on. But more importantly, how have we achieved this? From a personal perspective, and having been a member of the staff at DCU since 1986 and president for almost a decade, the key words for me that define DCU are dynamism, innovation, inclusion, and engagement. From the outset, DCU has always been a place of change in campus landscape, in student population, in curriculum, in footprint, and in so many other areas. But it has never been about change for its own sake, but rather change with purpose. DCU is a place devoted to the pursuit of excellence in research and teaching and learning. An institution that has developed highly productive and innovative partnerships with enterprise and other stakeholders. A university that's committed to educational opportunity through our renowned Access programme, and more recently, our broader agenda for widening participation. In addition, DCU has always had a culture that views challenges as something to be overcome with creative solutions, new ideas, better models. It is the very antithesis of an ivory tower institution. It is a university in, of, and for the community. The success of organisations and institutions is always about people, and DCU is no exception to this. Our success is thanks to the quality, commitment, loyalty, and support of our staff, our students, our graduates, and our many, many friends. In particular, I want to mention my 2 predecessors, Danny O'Hare and Ferdinand von Prunzinski, who both played such pivotal roles in the development of this university. I also want to wish our President-designate, Derek Keogh, every success when he begins his term in office in just a few weeks' time. Machiavelli once wrote, "Whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past." So as we look to the future, it is of great significance and importance to us that we now have our own authoritative history to inform us. So on behalf of everyone in DCU, I wish to express my sincere thanks and congratulations to Dr. Eoin Kinsella, the author, on an excellent publication that is comprehensive, rigorous, and of course very readable. Gura míle maith agat, Eoin. Finally, I want to express particular gratitude to the advisory group that steered this project from the outset. And I will name all members of the group: Ellen Breen, Albert Pratt, Brian Trench, Derek Keogh, Frank Suckley, Gary Murphy, Helena Sheehan, James Kelly, John Horgan, Mary Canning, Pádraig McKeown, Pat Barker, Pádraig Travers, Ross Munnelly, and last but certainly not least, Susan Folan. I asked one member of that group to launch the book this evening, and I'm very pleased that my good friend Mary Canning acceded to my request, as it would be very difficult to find someone more appropriate for this task. Mary is renowned as an expert on higher education systems globally, and she is also the esteemed president of the Royal Irish Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mary Canning.
I'd like to thank President Brian MacCraith for the invitation to speak here today. I'd like to thank Eoin Kinsella for such a well-written book that is fascinating for students of Irish higher education policy, as well, of course, for all the staff, students, and the former students of DCU. This is a most fascinating history, not just of the institution, but also it is a commentary on the development of Irish higher education over the last 40 years. Indeed, this book is a mirror of how great the system-wide changes have been, and it is also a commentary on how challenging it has been for Irish institutions and their stakeholders to achieve those changes that have been so urgently required to ensure the relevance of higher education to a rapidly changing Ireland. The splendid first chapter establishes the context for the birth of the NIHE in the higher education policy world of the 1960s and 1970s. The bureaucratic studies that beset the creation of the new institution that became the NIHE Dublin and subsequently DCU, from an early agreement that such an institution was needed in North Dublin, to the turf battles that arose between the then Vocational Education Committee of Dublin and the emerging NIHE, these battles are vividly described in the book. Indeed, the history throws a great deal of light on the policy failures that to this day continue to be, alas, a part of higher education in Ireland. The tenacity and courage of NIHE's first president, Dr. Danny O'Hare, as he fought for the creation and resourcing of his fledgling institution, shines through these pages. Several times it is stated that without his belief in the value of a higher education institution for Dublin, with a technical and technological mission, NIHE, that is subsequently DCU, would not have been created or developed. This book documents how the first president worked tirelessly and remorselessly over a 22-year term and through a succession of no less than 13 ministers of education to recruit and retain excellent staff, secure the best possible infrastructure and buildings and finance, and who led the NIHE to achieve the status of a university and become Dublin City University in 1989. The discussion of governance in DCU is especially interesting because of the difficulties that developed and the lessons learned from the process of recruiting a president to follow Dr. O'Hare. In 1999, important lessons were learned that are applicable to institutions beyond DCU, and these will be immediately apparent to anyone involved in the sector, and they become relevant to what happens today. However, DCU overcame the challenges of finding a successor for the first president and appointed Ferdinand von Pronsnynsky, who ably continued the excellent work and under whose discretion and direction the leadership of DCU continued to grow and to flourish. And the process of appointing a new president in 2009 proceeded smoothly and culminated in the selection of Professor Brian MacCraith, who took over as the third president in 2010. Running right through this book is the sad and frustrating theme that higher education in Ireland has been and continues to be grossly under-resourced, in spite of statements from politicians and policymakers about the importance of higher education for social and economic development. From its early days, when the first staff members in DCU had to scrabble to find suitable accommodation and equipment, to the present moments, the efforts of DCU leaders have been unrelenting and heroic in the face of bureaucratic inanition. The issue of translating policy aspirations into binding agreements on the part of government continues to dog higher education in Ireland to this day. Chapter 4 is an excellent account of the evolution of philanthropic funding in DCU and the contribution of Atlantic Philanthropies to the university and then the subsequent expansion during the glory days of PRTLI and SFI are well described. SFI funding in those days was not awarded not just to applied research, but also allowed that essential ingredient of a higher education institution, the development of a capacity to carry out blue skies and original research. The significant initiatives and successes of the emerging university are well documented in this volume. I shall highlight just some of them that were important not just for NIHE and for DCU, but also for the national system. First, there were the challenges of creating a new curriculum and courses, including language courses, that were and are relevant to employers and students. And these challenges were ably tackled during the first days of the institution and continue to be developed to this day. The development of the Distance Education Centre was a significant contribution to Irish third-level education, and that forms an important part of the history of the sector from the 1980s onwards. The creation of a robust validation and accreditation process as a routine requirement for the formal active engagement of external experts from business, industry, other universities, international as well as Irish, was largely pioneered in DCU. A proud achievement was and is the access and community outreach programs. These have brought many opportunities to individuals in North Dublin, where previously such opportunities were not available. Impressive tables in the book on pages 220 and 221 show the growth in the take-up of these opportunities. The building of the Helix Theatre is a wonderful addition to the university and to Ballymun, indeed to North Dublin, providing it has, and will do again soon we hope, a nexus for the performing arts as well as a centre for larger events. This tradition of creating leading centres that have national importance and provide expertise and information to Ireland as a whole has been a feature of DCU. And in that context, I wish to round out the list by highlighting the creation of expertise in all aspects of education studies, assessment, and teaching, emanating from the incorporation of St. Patrick's and smaller institutions of higher education. Only those who were involved could appreciate the diplomacy, efforts, and sheer hard work, as well as the financial investment required to establish the National Education Centre and to resource it in the wonderful buildings that it now occupies. The process of merging institutions is fraught with difficulty, and the sheer determination and goodwill that were part of the education faculty are an example of what can be done with exemplary leadership. I congratulate Eoin Kinsella, the author of this book, which I am privileged to launch today. The book is structured and presented to the highest possible standard, with photographs that are evocative of each of the last 4 decades. It is meticulously footnoted and has a comprehensive index, which will make it an invaluable reference for all students of the evolution of higher education in Ireland. I shall finish here by paying tribute to the outgoing president for his stellar leadership, not just of DCU, but also for his contribution to Irish higher education and society. We wish him very well in the next phase of his career, wherever that will take him. And we wish his successor, Dara Keogh, every success in assuming the leadership of the university, one of the 100 top universities of the world, as he steps into Brian's shoes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, for those words. Our final speaker this evening is Mr. Eoin Kinsella. Eoin is Assistant Editor with the Royal Irish Academy's Documents of Irish Foreign Policy project, a joint venture between the Royal Irish Academy, the Irish National Archives and the Department of Foreign Affairs. He's a graduate of UCD and author of Leopardstown Park Hospital and Catholic Survival in Protestant Times.
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening to launch my history of DCU, even if the circumstances are slightly unusual. And now Brian and Mary will have already spoken about the university and the book itself, so my role really is to thank some of the many people who helped me along the way as I was researching and writing the book. First, my thanks to Brian. University histories are invariably written by alumni or by long-serving members of staff. Now, I don't qualify under either heading, and I think it speaks to the university's traditions that the president entrusted an outsider with recording its history and also gave me free rein within his office's archive. Brian's already mentioned the role played by Dara Keogh, Albert Pratt and Mary in bringing this book to fruition, but I want to add my personal thanks as well to Dara and Albert for ensuring that I received all of the support and resources that I needed, and to Mary both for graciously agreeing to launch the book and also for sharing with me her knowledge of the higher education sector as it was being written. Now, there were so many other people who helped me along the way. The book's acknowledgements actually run to 2 pages, and I hope I'll be forgiven for not mentioning everyone by name this evening, but there are a few others that I'd like to highlight. Now, historians know all too well that institutional archives can sometimes be forgotten and occasionally lost forever through accidental neglect. And in that context, I think it's very important to mention Susan Folan, Yvonne Duff and David O'Callaghan, who, along with others, for very many years have acted as guardians and curators of DCU's visual and written records. Without their efforts to preserve historical papers, photographs and ephemera, this project certainly wouldn't have been possible. Now, along with all of her colleagues in the President's office, Yvonne helped me with numerous research queries, Susan clarified a lot of points for me, and David provided me with digital copies of all of, or nearly all of the photographs reproduced in the book, and many of which he actually took himself. And I think DCU owes them a debt of gratitude for ensuring that much of its history hasn't been irretrievably lost. Now, I don't want to stereotype my profession, but I think it's fair to say that historians are generally more comfortable dealing with the dead. And a project like this then is somewhat daunting, given that there are so many people still alive who have invested so much of their time and indeed often their entire careers in the institution, and so many who were actually around at the very, very beginning and helped to create a university out of very, very meagre beginnings and resources. So many of DCU's current and former staff and students shared their memories with me, and too many to name here, but I particularly want to thank Michael Burke, Eugene Kennedy, Pat O'Mahony and Brian Trench, who generously made their personal collections of NIHED DCU material available to me. Now, the university also convened a committee to oversee the project, and I'm very grateful to Dara, Albert, Susan and Brian and Mary, who I've already mentioned, as well as Patricia Barker, Ellen Breen, Padraig McKeown, Ross Munnelly, Helena Sheehan and Frank Supley for all of their help. John Horgan read the entire manuscript in draft and provided invaluable feedback. And the School of History and Geography at St. Pat's hosted me for much of the project, and I'm particularly grateful to the head of the school, Jimmy Kelly, both for working with the project committee and also for making sure that I had a space to do my work in. And thanks also to Neville Scarlett, who generously shared with me his office, and to Juliana Edelman, Jonathan Cherry, Marnie Hay and Will Murphy for keeping me company while I was at St. Pat's. And when you do get your hands on a copy, I think you'll agree the Four Courts Press have done a fantastic job with the production, and I want to thank everyone there for working so hard to get the book through the publication process, especially in light of the very difficult working conditions of the last few months. And they've also asked me to mention that the book is available from their website at a special launch price until Friday the 3rd of July. Now, as I was completing the book, my colleagues at the Royal Irish Academy, Michael Kennedy and John Gibney, encouraged me around the final lap, and Carol Houlihan of Trinity College Dublin read and improved the manuscript as well. Lastly, my wife Lily helped convert statistics into tables and graphs that appear in the book, but most importantly, her support and selflessness after the arrival of our baby daughter Kate made sure that I was able to actually finish my work itself and finish the book off. So I'll finish up with just a few words about the book and the project. So having known little about DCU before I began working, it very quickly became apparent to me that the history of its birth as NIHED and its evolution into and as DCU were not just fascinating, but also shed very interesting light on the wider higher education system in Ireland. And I knew I had a compelling story when, at a very early stage in my research, I came across a quote attributed to the chairman of the HEA from the late 1970s. And when he was asked to comment on the government's decision to open up NIHE Dublin, he said it was the greatest load of rubbish he'd ever heard of in his life. And when you boil that quotation and when you bring it down to its core, I think it begs a central question that I tried to answer in the book. And that is, how do you create a modern university out of nothing? And other questions arose then from that point as my research went on. What kind of effect does it have on a university's evolution when, for roughly half its life to date, the country has been in economic difficulties of one form or another, from severe to very, very severe? When you land a new higher education institution into a crowded urban landscape, what effect does it have on the local community? And how does that community then in turn influence the university's development? What kind of challenges and tensions arise when you scale up from 191 students to more than 17,000 in a relatively short space of time? And one question that I was particularly eager to look into is, what kind of impact did Atlantic Philanthropies have on DCU even before it was involved in the creation of the pre-RTLI scheme, under which DCU did very well from the late 90s onwards? And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that Atlantic's engagement with DCU, which began in 1989, was absolutely transformational. So I've tried to answer all those questions and many others. There's plenty left to say. There's a whole book's worth left to say about the history of DCU. But instead of going into it in detail, I'll leave it to you to get your hands on a copy and to explore the university's fascinating past at your own leisure. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our evening. I'd like to thank you most sincerely on behalf of DCU for coming and joining with us. Please know that you can buy a copy of this book in any of the newly opened bookshops, or at a discounted price, directly from the publisher Four Courts Press, available at fourcourtspress.ie. For now, I wish you and your families safety and well-being, and we look forward to seeing you face to face again in the future. Good evening.